Adam, well, welcome to the podcast. Beth and I have been looking forward to talking to you about this work that you've been in for the past several years and are thrilled that we get to have you on the podcast to talk about such an important book. So welcome.
Thank you. It's a delight to be here to see you both. Thank you.
And so we talked a little bit just before the show, but this is not something that you just wrote overnight. This is something that you've actually been painstakingly writing over the past number of years. Uh, what is it? What's it like for you to take personal work, professional
Mhm.
work, and then try to put something together that you? I know that you carry a tremendous burden and passion for the sake of others to find healing, but to
Mhm.
put that all into a book, that seems like a lot of pressure. But it's a worthy venture because
Mhm.
it's been so helpful, even to us already. So, what was that process like for you?
Well, at some level, it was a book that I wanted to have as a 30-year-old when I needed this content. So in many ways, I was writing to my younger self, writing to 32-year-old Adam, 35-year-old Adam. 35 is when I began to be introduced to the idea that I had a story and that the symptoms in my life, anxiety, depression, difficulty with relationships, marriage difficulties, difficulties with God, that all of these symptoms, difficulties being alone just with Adam, that these symptoms may be rooted in my story. And by story, I really mean stories, plural, because all of us have so many stories of things that we experienced between the ages of 0 and 18 when we were with our primary caretakers that have significantly affected the way we see the world, the way we experience the world, particularly the way we relate to the people who are closest to us. So writing it was a labor of love to my younger self and to all the people that want like a concise, clear explanation of what we mean when we invite people into story work.
Yeah. Now, you use a word there that I want to help clarify because it's worthy of distinction. The idea of story work. A lot of people, they might go see a therapist, and therapists have been trained in all kinds of various modalities and using different metaphors and analogy to describe what their processes are. But you're using the term story work.
Mhm.
Can you define that for people so that they
Sure.
understand exactly what you mean and how that's different?
Sure. Great question. So if I were to have been asked as a 35-year-old man, hey, Adam, what's your story? I would have told like a 30,000-foot overview of, I grew up in a family of five. I have two twin brothers that are 2 years younger than me. My dad was a Vietnam vet. I had some emotional, physical abuse as a kid. I was super close to my mom. And I would have been able to put some words to what I would call my story, but it would have been very high level, very
Hmm.
general. And when we talk about story work, what we're really talking about is getting into the particularity of on the ground level telling of two, three, four of the formative stories that you may remember from your growing up years. And lots of people have memories or fragments of memories, slices of memories, portions of memories, and they dismiss those as quote unquote no big deal because the
Hmm.
posture is that happened 30 years ago. I don't see how that could still be affecting me today. So,
Yeah.
for example, when I was in middle school, I was ruthlessly mocked because a rumor started that I shaved my legs. I didn't have a lot of hair on my legs as a boy. I was a late developer in terms of puberty, and it was brutal. So
Mm.
I can tell you that story like I just did,
Yeah.
or I could tell you one of the stories of when it happened, who did it, where I was, what I felt, what the sensations in my body were, what I did when I went home from school that day after having been humiliated in front of, my classmates. And even now, as I'm talking with particularity, you can probably feel the
Yeah.
shift in your own body.
Yes.
When we talk about story work, we're talking about particularity. I'm not talking about I had an alcoholic father. I'm talking about it was my 10th birthday. My mother was there. My friend, this is not my story. I'm making this up. My friends
Hmm.
were there. My dad got there late and he came home drunk and he humiliated me in front of my friends at my 10-year-old birthday party.
Right.
That's a ground level. That's the beginning of a ground level story, telling of the story with particularity. So story work is about the incidents. It's
Hmm.
about the scenes. It's about,
Now,
yeah,
well,
go.
one of the things that what you're emphasizing there, and so just for our listeners, Adam and I went through some training with Dan Allender back in the
10,000 or
two-
10,000 years
two-
ago. It probably feels like it 10 years
awesome.
ago.
Yeah, and one of the things that where you were very helpful and at times interpreting what I was experiencing through that training because you had already done so much work regarding the brain. What Why is it that
Mm-hmm.
when we get into the particulars of story, of retelling a story and getting into the details, and
Yeah.
I remember a story that I took to that training, and I was walking through a neighborhood, but I only had shorts and a tank top on, and I was being invited to talk. What did the grass feel like on my feet? What did
Yeah.
the You didn't have shoes on. What was it like walking miles in the Texas summer with no shoes on? Like, we were getting very granular on what my experience was like whenever I was that young,
Yes.
but that's part of the process, the healing process here. What's happening uniquely when we're telling specific, detailed stories? What's happening in our bodies and brain whenever we're doing those things?
Yeah. Oh, that's a lovely question and an important one. Trauma resides in the details. Trauma, harm, heartache, tragedy, abuse, it is as much embodied as it is enscolled. So, does trauma affect our brains? Absolutely. But it also affects our bodies. And the nature of trauma is that it causes fragmentation. What is fragmentation? It's the separation of regions of your brain from one another. And so the brain is a complex system. Complex systems are more stable when they are differentiated and linked, both. The nature of the grass under your feet or the hot Texas pavement under your feet, when you experience trauma, the memory of the sensations of the horrific event gets separated from your thoughts about the event, gets separated from your emotions that you experienced in the event, gets separated from the timestamp of the autobiographical memory of the event, and all that stuff gets separated. In Christian language, it's the opposite of shalom.
Mhm.
Shalom is about integration, it's about connection. Brains function best when the neurons in your brain are highly connected with one another. But when we have a traumatic experience, that stuff gets separated, fragmented, disconnected, which is why 30 years later, you might see an expression on your wife's face or a edge in your husband's voice, and you are reacting to that and you don't know why, and you call it an overreaction,
Mhm. Yeah.
but it's not. You are responding to deep levels of memory in your body that his tone of voice or her facial expression evoked.
Yeah. Well, there an interesting story, and just to illustrate this, to kind of make it real and live.
Yeah.
Beth and I were in Florida this
Co-
week
Cocoa
before,
Beach
Cocoa
last
Beach,
week, literally.
and people kept recommending to us to go to the Ron John surf shop. It's like the second largest Ron John surf shop uh, in the United States. I guess there's another one in California. And
Which we kind of laugh because if anyone knows us,
yeah,
one,
we're not.
we both grew up in the middle of the United States, nowhere close to any body of
We
water.
don't do beach life.
So
Yeah.
we're not like beach goers of any sort of imagination. So we were like, really? Like, you really think we should go? And we're like, all right, we'll go. You know, like people say it's one of those things you just got to check off. And I'm like, okay. So we go.
So we walk in, and we're doing this just to say that we did it.
Yeah.
And we're walking downstairs is the guy section.
And we did. I was like, hey, those are
I
cool.
need a new swimsuit,
Yeah.
which that had story to it because,
Yeah.
as our listeners know, I had a heart attack. I've lost a ton of weight, and I'm still in the process of recovering and living in this new body that
So we saw a swimsuit. And I was like, hey, it's like that would be a cool
that'd
one.
be great.
Yeah.
And
So we're in the
there's a
guys
short
section.
sleeve button up that'd be great for you. And I'm like, no, I'm not that kind of guy. I'm not the skater guy. So
Surfer
that
guy.
gets into all kinds of story work. Well, we decide, okay, we got to go upstairs, and so we're going to go look upstairs. Well, we get up the steps, and then we take a left, and the first section was bathing suits, women's bathing suits. What happened for you then?
Like almost I instantly kind of said, why are we here? We don't need to be here. Like, there's nothing here for us. Like, I was so annoyed. Like, I don't want to be here. This isn't my kind of stuff. Like, I was
Agitated?
irritated and agitated.
So right there, that's what Adam just said. Like, why are you reacting this way?
Which normally, if people say that, then I get more reactive. Because it's more like, it feels like it's more, why are you? And that goes into other story work.
Yep.
Okay, so now she's got memories of people responding to her when something is happening, but they're saying, I mean, what was your mom's line? Don't be so dramatic.
Mm-hmm.
So Beth's having an experience.
Mm-hmm.
And as we keep trying to walk around, you're noticing, like, there were bikinis there. There were crop tops there.
Yeah.
Like, you're picking up on specific types of clothing and getting more agitated.
Yeah. But so growing up in kind of the 1980s Christian focus on the family type of era for my parents, you were not only were you not allowed to wear anything of that sort, to even think you might wear something, you were bad.
Right.
So just to even be around it, it felt like all of that culture was in the room with me.
Yes.
And I did not want to participate. Like, I didn't want to, I didn't want to have to, let's say, caretake really this culture that wasn't even physically there, but I felt responsible to it in the moment. And I didn't want to have to deal with it. I would rather have not been at the store than to have to face that memory.
And then there's other dynamics to it as well, because it was expensive. There was
Mhm.
money involved. And like, because we ended up talking about this, because you don't spend money on this kind of
I
stuff.
don't know how to have fun, basically. Which
That's
was
a really big deal,
it
because
was a new topic of
for
conversation.
little younger Beth, play is dangerous.
Yeah.
Because there are so many rules from an evangelical context, camp culture, be good, dress modestly, boys are over sexualized, girls are sexualized.
And as a 9, just go along to get along. So what does my older brother want to do? What do my parents want to do? Like, that's easier just to make them happy.
And then you don't go to stores like this to buy stuff and have fun. Even though there was money in your family, there was still always this don't spend money on yourself dynamic.
Don't be selfish. Don't be,
So what ends up happening is that for 3 hours,
no, maybe not that long, but yeah, at least 2 hours. I was very dysregulated.
we go out to dinner to go grab some pizza, which was pretty good, and but you're still
and
feeling
Jeff,
it.
and Jeff's like trying to ask really good questions, and
Right.
my logical brain, right, my adult brain could see that my husband's wanting to engage in my story, but what I would, and you would, you'll have to fill this in because I am interested in your viewpoints on this. What I would say is my avoidant attachment style at the moment, because we talked earlier about how I go back and forth between avoidant and ambivalent. My avoidant personality or attachment was saying, why is he asking me all these questions? Like I'm about ready, I'm being set up for something, I'm gonna get caught, I'm gonna do something wrong, I'm gonna say something wrong, and then this is gonna go south. And it did. It did do that. And then I'm spinning in my mind, see, I can't do anything right. I'm
Yes.
getting it all wrong. Now he's feeling bad. Now I'm, and then I really just went way offline into my trauma response. So having complex trauma went into that. And so I'm really dysregulated. Thankfully, Jeff, of course, knowing all that I'm going through and working through and have done his own work, he knew where I was at. He just hung in there.
Yeah.
But it definitely took some time for that dysregulation to come back to a place where my frontal lobe was able to come back online and we could actually have an adult conversation versus little Bethy being all dysregulated. So
yeah,
I'd love to hear.
yeah. So Adam, people who are listening, they know this kind of experience and they stay quiet about it in their marriages. They're deeply ashamed of it. They don't have any sense of direction, hope, understanding, any interpretive grid to understand what's happening. Tons of shame, tons of powerlessness. So Beth has used a number of different categories in retelling that story, which are categories that you're using in your book.
Yeah.
So how is it that this paradigm that you're offering to people through your book, how can that help someone like Beth who is new and maybe could find hope in doing some story work?
Yes. Well, first of all, thanks for sharing that it's not a vignette. It is a vignette, but it's from your life. But it's not only from your life, it's from your very recent life.
This was Thursday.
Yeah.
Right?
It's Monday.
And that's such a gift to your listeners. Just to hear the story gives so many people the sense of, I am not alone. I am not alone. Beth had this experience. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, I love the categories that you've offered. You found yourself in that surf shop remembering some really unpleasant stuff, but you had no sensation of recall, so you didn't know it was a memory. You just had the bodily sensation of, I don't want to be in the bathing suit area of this surf shop. And then as you became increasingly dysregulated, you had your mother's voice of, you're a drama queen. Did you hear that voice? I don't care. Your body was remembering Beth, the accusation of Beth is too deep a feeler. And so you're spinning, and then your husband engages. And that engagement alone stirred up even more accusation inside. And oh, my heart, I mean, even as you were narrating it, I was just like, that was a hard couple of hours. That was a hard couple of hours for your body because you were remembering trauma.
Yeah.
It's interesting the way that you just said that, Adam, that it was not necessarily cognitive nor willful.
No, it was automatic.
I mean, you've been in these circles, Adam, and you know, there is a sense to where it is sometimes communicated, particularly within a Christian worldview, to take a thought captive.
Yes, that's right.
And And this is where, like, Beth, I know, is part of the sorrow that she carries, is that she wants to turn it off. She wants to catch it quick and not have to suffer for a few hours.
Sure.
But she doesn't even know that it's happening.
Yes.
or where it's coming from, or how to
Right.
stop it. And then
Right.
a lot of times, like I said, is when you're trying to engage with me,
Oh,
it's
I am your
you're
body is responding to you're not
abs-
even responding to me necessarily.
no. I, well, I mean, in the past, before I realized I had complex trauma, I thought I was responding to you
Of
because
course.
you're
Yes.
right here. But then, of course, reading your book, Adam, when you talk about implicit and explicit memory, I was like, oh man, this is making so much more sense. Like, I am reacting to Jeff not because of him, but because of what I went through in the past.
Yes.
But all I can see is that this is my husband in front of me. And so it makes me sad. And I'd love to hear your thought on this, is that I would blame him
Of
for
course.
what I was feeling in the moment because that's all I could see or
Yep.
feel or experience. I didn't understand that my story was actually what was playing a bigger role in that moment.
Mhm. And that confession that you just made bears such a level of honesty, vulnerability, and courage. And by the confession you made, I mean you acknowledged that you had a very difficult interaction with your husband, and that although I'm sure Jeff was not loving you perfectly, you were very aware that what you were feeling and experiencing from him was being filtered through your past stories as a girl.
Yeah.
And that in that sense, you were reacting not merely to Jeff in the present, but to your past experiences of trauma.
Right.
And that is the nature of intimate relationships for all of us who have
All of
trauma.
us.
Right.
All of us. There's no way out of that bind. But not everyone has the courage that you do to acknowledge it, because it can feel very vulnerable to acknowledge that, because you're taking responsibility for your agony that's stored in the cells of your body from years and years ago before you even met Jeff.
Yep.
And you're saying to Jeff, look, I'm feeling this from you, but I'm aware that there are other stories at play besides what I experience as your cruelty or your dismissiveness or your combativeness or whatever it is. And that is the courage, the honesty, the loveliness of that confession. If we entered all of our conflicts with that awareness, that alone would change the nature of the conflict.
We did, like today was a great example. And we shared a little bit of this beforehand. I was listening to your book, which I I had an advanced copy, and so I have Speechify, which is an amazing app for people like me who have a reading disability. So I was listening to your book as
This
I'm
episode is sponsored by Speechify.
yeah, exactly. Seriously, if y'all
It's a game
need,
saver for Beth.
it's now literally a game saver. So, but I was listening to it on the way to pick up my parents to help them go to a doctor's appointment. I knew I was setting myself up, but like Jeff said later, no, you were engaging your story. You knew that you were learning about how to engage your story as you went to go engage your story with your parents. And so then when I came home, what's so wonderful is that as Jeff, as we know, you two started your real journeys of recovery about 10 years ago. Jeff has been on this journey. And what's been great is that as I've been able to see, oh, wait, this isn't about Jeff.
Yep.
This is about the pain, the sorrow that I have not known or been able to recognize or name in the past. And so when I came home, I was very dysregulated and I knew I probably was going to be. And Jeff's like, would you like to talk about it? And
And some of the, I will say for our listeners, Some of the terms that you'll hear Beth use are terms that we have adopted to stay away from other shaming terms. Beth came home upset. That actually could be a very activating way to characterize what's happening in her. And so we've tried to come up with terms that somehow help her
Triggered,
give her
dysregulated.
hope, like something's happening inside of me that I don't need to be ashamed about and that I have the freedom to name.
But it's also been helpful because so as I, again, unpacking, okay, I have a lot of avoidant tendencies that when I got home, I knew that my wonderful, loving, tender husband would know because he asked me to get him Starbucks. And I was like, I just can't. I'm sorry. You're going
Right.
to make yourself copy.
I felt the text.
Yeah, I knew he would. So when I got home, I knew he would be curious and he would be there for me if I was willing. And I honestly didn't know if I could or wanted to talk about it.
Yep.
As I was fearful of my dysregulation, just like it was in my family of origin, they couldn't handle my being upset or frustrated. And so
Yes.
whenever I see you not knowing what to do with my dysregulation or it frustrating you or a lot of times me blaming you maybe for it or you feeling like I'm blaming you. So I was like, okay, I am really spun out, triggered, whatever word you want to use. And you're like, would you like to talk about it? And I was really scared, and not because you're a scary person.
You literally said, I don't feel safe right now.
And I of course, I couched it
But
saying,
that's not because of you.
but not because you said you don't have to say that. But that was because you've done your own work, and I do appreciate that. But as I sat down and I started explaining what I experienced, what I was going through, honestly, a lot of my sorrow right now is that I have been unpacking my story and I'm seeing things that I didn't want to see or recognize or know many years ago or as a child. And now I see it and can name it, but it's like, I don't know how to fully yet move through it all.
Yes.
Especially when you know that maybe your family, parents being older are able to go there. And so having to love them. I mean, I love them. They're wonderful, sweet people. And we have a story.
That's right.
And I have a story that I need to unpack and understand how it affects me today. But I don't have the capacity to unpack it really with them. So you allowing me to unpack it today was really, really helpful. And I was really afraid because I knew my emotions were huge. And in my family of origin, that was not okay. Unless you're happy. Your emotions are big and happy. That's okay.
Right.
Well, Adam, and this speaks to something that Beth is alluding to. We have a lot of reasons why we don't want to engage our stories.
Sure.
For Beth, it's, I don't know how to talk to my sibling. I don't know, my parents are aging.
Well, I want to keep the peace. I'm a 9.
And then there's relational reasons.
Yep.
Then there's personal reasons. There's
Yep.
personality reasons. And just as an aside, I wanted to say this, sir. This is why we say that each Enneagram type is like a Sherwin-Williams paint color. You don't just go to buy a blue. There's a million blues.
Yeah.
And like the particulars of your 9-ness matter a lot more than just the generic I'm a 9.
Like your dad being a 9, we're so different.
So different. And your experience of it, your story of it is unique to you. So just keep that in mind. But Adam, I mean, that's one of the things that it feels scary to engage these things.
Yes.
And Beth has I don't want to feel this way anymore, is what she'll sometimes say to me. What are some of the other phrases that you hear from people of why they don't want to engage their stories?
Oh, yeah. Whew. although it's not articulated this way, Beth said it really well. She said, I didn't want to see what was true, or I don't want to see what was true. That's a big one. I mean, it is very hard for us to acknowledge the truth of the heartache, of the devastation of our lives. And no one escapes being harmed in this world. So even if you grew up in a family, I want listeners to know you don't have to experience trauma to be able to experience the healing power of story work. What you need to be willing to do is to look at the truth of what actually happened for you as a boy or a girl in your particular family. Another reason that people are reluctant to do this work is my parents did the best they could. My parents are alive. My parents, I don't want to blame my parents, is a common objection that I hear. And we're not talking about blaming anyone. There's a difference between blaming and naming. So blaming is a posture, it's a pointed finger, it's a posture of condemnation, and naming is, this is true. This happened. This was the nature of my relationship with my mother when I was in 3rd grade. Like naming what was true. Another way of getting at that is it's simply in biblical language, it's coming into the light. Mm-hmm. And very, very many of us have wanted to escape what's been true of our lives as boys or girls because it feels very vulnerable, very raw, and it can be very dysregulating and unraveling. It's this sense of, I've heard this a million times, Adam, if I go where you're inviting me to go, I will start crying and I will never stop. Woo. Okay. Well, I understand why you're reluctant to go there then. Because you believe that if you go there, you will start to heave and wail and sob, and you'll never get up off the floor. And you need to be a wife and a mother and a coworker, etc. And so that's an overwhelming proposition for you. And I get it. I get it. However, if it's the truth that sets us free, might there be deep redemptive value in looking at some of the core stories of our wounding? There's a passage in Jeremiah, it's in Jeremiah 6, it's repeated in Jeremiah 8, where God gets mad at the leadership of Israel because they dress the wounds of his people as though they were not serious, saying, peace, peace, everything's fine, when everything is not fine. Sadly, many of us do that with our own wounds. We say, peace, peace, that was 30 years ago. I don't think it's still affecting me today. They did the best they could. They didn't mean to harm me. I was just over dramatic. And we are dressing the wounds within us as though they are not serious. And in my experience, in my opinion, God longs for us to take our wounds as seriously as God does.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that Beth has mentioned a few times, which is another aspect of naming that's as you read through your book that is very, very helpful, and that's this idea of attachment styles. And there's all kinds of different language for it, different concepts, different applications of it. I remember, hearing about it at first for new moms of newborns, whenever they were talking about attachment and wanting to have baby on skin, that kind of stuff. There was all kinds of conversation about attachment styles, and you've heard Beth mention about being ambivalent, or you've mentioned disorganized and avoidant. Tell us a little bit about what that part of the conversation means and how that's related to story work.
Sure. Your attachment style simply refers to the way in which your nervous system has been wired to relate to the people who are closest to you. Mm-hmm. And so the essence of what's called avoidant attachment is that you grew up with a dismissive, rejecting, or shaming primary caretaker. And as a result, whenever you expressed emotion or longing or desire, it was dismissed, it was shamed, it was rejected, it was shut down. And by the age of 5, 6, 10, 15, you realize I'm alone in the world, and there is not going to be any interactive regulation of my body and my big feelings. I have to do that by myself. There is no person in my world, mother, father, stepmother, stepfather, who is willing to be with me in my big feelings and help me regulate them. They're not interested in that. And so what you learn is I've got to regulate my body by myself. I'm on my own. That's avoidant attachment. The essence of what's called ambivalent attachment is that you had a caretaker that was inconsistent and intrusive. By inconsistent, I mean they were there for you 1 minute. This is my story. I'm an ambivalently attached man. My mother would be there for me lots of times, super there for me, until she wasn't, because she was too preoccupied with her own trauma, her own feelings, her own needs. And all of a sudden, I was utterly alone. And the madness of that uncertainty creates distrust in the nervous system. In other words, I grow up to become an adult, and my felt experience is, are you going to be there for me or not, Jeff, as my close friend? 1 minute you are. The next minute, I don't expect you to be. Why? Because that's how my nervous system has learned the world works. And so in close relationships, people who are ambivalently attached are often experienced as needy or clingy. Why? Because I need constant reassurance that you're going to be there for me. You did it this morning. Great. But it's this afternoon.
Sure.
Now, in contrast to those two types of attachment, there is secure attachment. And secure attachment is when you have an embodied sense of hope that anytime there's relational rupture, anytime there's conflict, the relationship will be restored. We will become closer through this. It's inevitable, and it's going to happen soon. And if listeners are listening to that and they're like, I can't imagine that, well, then you're not securely attached. And I understand it's hard for me to even imagine that. But all of us can move from insecure attachment styles to increasingly to secure attachment. That's the work of healing.
Okay, so I want to go there because I have my own questions about that. So, we talked a little bit before we got on that some will talk about disorganized, how you can kind of fluctuate between the ambivalent and the avoidant. So I'd love to kind of go there. But I also want to go to what you're saying about that you can heal and find secure attachment.
Yes.
The reason why I want to go there is, and what that process looks like. Because as you're saying that, I'm like, yes, because as I've been doing my own work and being able to see Jeff for all that he really is, that I have secure attachment with him.
Yes.
All that dysregulation was past story. Now, I mean, of course, we're married, so obviously there's things that we've had to work on, but ultimately he is my secure attachment. But I still felt the insecure attachment struggles. But now that I'm starting the healing process, I can, like, when we went to the Ron John store, as we were in the car, there's part of my brain that's like doom and gloom. This is the worst. I can't think of anything else. And yet there's this part of me, it's almost like we're watching the show Severance, and it feels like my brain has been severed. Like I go into dysregulation and trauma brain.
Yep.
But then it's like I'm reintegrating.
Yep.
I'm so into this show. But it's like I'm reintegrating where I'm like, wait, no, I know Jeff and I, we're fine. Like he's fine. He's right there with me. He's hanging in there. He's not allowing this dysregulation to throw him off pace. I am okay. He loves me. And that these little like glimmers of hope come in at the moment,
Yes.
I'd love for you to talk about, because I still feel at times helpless and hopeless. Like
Mhm.
my story still feels at times like it's going to eat me whole,
Yes.
but then I have these glimpses of hope. And so it's like this back and forth. So can you walk us through that?
Sure. First of all, what you're describing is normal and natural because you have neurons. Jeff is giving you different, and here's the better word, novel experiences for your nervous system.
Well, thank you,
So-
Adam. Thank you. I'm gonna put that on my.
Yeah, you're gonna
I'm a
remind me.
novel husband. Thank you.
So you come home dysregulated from your day. This was 2 hours ago. And you by expect, I mean your nervous system has been conditioned and primed to expect Jeff to be disgusted with the fact that you are overwhelmed.
Right. Not
To have
so much from him, but from past. Yeah.
from past.
Yeah.
Your neurons have been primed to expect that the close people in your life are not going to welcome you in this state
Right.
because you've had thousands of experiences of that as a girl, where you were called a drama queen, where you were cursed and accused and named poorly. But then you risk letting Jeff know a little bit, even in the way you did the text. You let him know a little bit, I'm not okay.
Yeah.
And that risk is, I think, properly named repentance on your part. You're doing something that there's no reason you should do. And
I mean,
Jeff,
wow, I've not thought of it that way, Adam. But she knew that text was risky
yes,
because it was an act of self-care
yes,
when she wanted to just care or go into codependency and like,
Right.
yeah, I'll do whatever. I'll
Yeah.
keep giving myself
Right.
to make you happy. And she said, no.
and she let you know, I'm not okay. Letting
Yeah.
you know that is so holy. Like, I don't have language for it, because there's nothing in Beth's nervous system that accounts for that. Why is she doing that? In my opinion, you have a hunger in your gut for more vitality, for more freedom, for more goodness. And that's almost unexplainable and inexplicable, but it's beautiful and glorious. And you risked with your husband. Now, do you have experiences with your husband of risking and it going well? Sure. And you're building on those. So the brain changes with novelty and surprise, but there has to be the risk of saying, Jeff, I don't feel safe. And I'm not saying that you're an unsafe man, but right now I'm not feeling safe in my own body, and I'm feeling dysregulated, and I don't know what you're going to do with me. Like, those sentences are so risky and so holy, and they're giving your brain a different experience of the relational world. That's one of the ways, the key ingredients to the healing process.
Now, Adam, part of the dynamic here, and we'll get into another topic that's addressed in the book. So in that moment, one, there is just kind of the fight of I want to stay present with my husband and want to receive his initiative, but my body's not feeling it.
That's
And
right.
so to say, I don't feel safe, but that's not because of you, and I'm not sure I want to talk. I've got another great friend who this guy has spoken so dearly into my life. He always has privilege to speak into my life, but he will always ask, um, it, "Can I share something with you?" before he shares something with me. But it's invitational, and so I've tried to mirror that with Beth. But part of the difficulty where Beth is at now is shame.
Sure.
So she's identified this attachment style, it feels overwhelming, as if, oh, this is neurological. Is this like
Yeah.
never going to change? That's
Yeah.
part of the negative inner critic belief. But then she's also wanting to receive in that moment from me. And so for her, it's the feeling of shame of like, man, even when my husband wants to offer me intimacy and connection, I don't have the capacity to hold that.
Yeah.
But you speak about kindness and
Yeah.
the importance of kindness.
Yeah.
Not necessarily kindness from other people,
Nope.
kindness towards yourself,
Yep.
which is I remember when Allender uh, quoted Paul that kindness leads to repentance,
Yep.
and I have used that ever since.
Uh-huh.
And I can't remember, I'm forgetting the artist's name, but he actually wrote a song called "Be Kind to Yourself." He's a national
Andrew
guy.
Peterson.
Yes, I weep at the song every damn time I hear it,
Me too.
because I'm not kind. I walk now, and my walks can be wearisome, because my hour-long walks in the morning can be fierce
Yes.
because of the lack of kindness.
Yes.
How is it, as a category of how we are to relate to ourselves, of kindness, important in doing story work?
Oh, number one, top of the list, importance. Why? You've already said it well. It's the kindness of God that leads to repentance. Very often, my posture towards Adam, when Adam is dysregulated, because that happens to me frequently as an ambivalently attached man, my body gets into similar amped up places that Beth's body was in just 2 short hours ago. And when my body gets into that place, the question is, Adam, how do you feel about that fact? How do you feel towards the part of you that is scared right now? What's your posture towards the part of you that's feeling overwhelming shame right now? And years ago, my posture was, to say it's unkind was an understatement. I mean, it was just punishing. It was, you shouldn't be afraid. You shouldn't, or you should be more mature and shouldn't be dealing with this shame. Or you should be more mature. You should have grown more. You're an expert on this. You have a podcast. You should be further along, Adam, and not as affected by that situation or by that person or by that email. And you can hear in my tone the accusations from Adam to Adam. That's self-contempt.
Mhm.
And we all wrestle with some measure of accusation from us to us. We all wrestle with some measure of self-contempt. But here's the critical question. When we become aware of it, like whatever the moment was when Beth became aware that she was not merely dysregulated, but that she was also feeling shame about the fact that she was dysregulated. When we become aware of that, in that moment, we can then ask this question: what does my body need? What does my heart need? And what would kindness to my body and my heart look like in this moment? Just asking that question, not knowing the answer, just asking it, begins to unravel the structures of evil in our lives. And the answer to that question for me might be, I need my wife to put her hand on my heart as I lie down and rest. The answer might be, I need to put on the playlist of music that I know soothes my heart. The answer might be, I need to take a 10-minute walk around the block and call a friend that I know understands me well and put some words to what I'm grappling with. In other words, I might need to reach out for care. The answer is far less important than asking the question,
Yeah.
what does kindness look like to my heart and body right now? That's what begins to get us out of the cycles of self-contempt.
Well, just hearing the way that you phrase that, it reminds me of those big questions of the Bible, like Jesus even asking the question, "Do you want to be healed?" Like
Yes.
even asking yourself, like, because I've asked you that question, "What do you need right now?" Needs to be asked with kindness
Yes.
because you quickly realize you've never known how to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
And there's you I mean, I just think about the story of our parents.
Mhm.
We certainly understood how to self-medicate, and they trained us in those strategies.
Yeah.
Right. But, how often did they ever take us aside when we were spun out to go and coach us through how to process a failure, a mistake?
Yes.
Um, I know those aren't skills that we're necessarily taught.
Mhm.
Right.
Um, and even though we had the Enneagram and I was going through all this training, I mean, we could talk to our kids, we're yeah, over and over again of times that we even missed with them. Um, and which become actually a model of those conversations for them with our grandchildren. It the and it makes me think there was a quote by a missionary once. I don't remember the missionary's name, but the quote that I remember it was, "Can you strain infinite love? Can you exhaust eternal kindness?" And
Mhm.
so to recognize that God's love, his kindness, whatever attribute you want to put in there is infinite, eternal, and unchangeable,
Yes. And always available.
always
But
available.
but will I join it, particularly when I am in need, like Beth was 2 hours ago? Will
Oh,
I
yeah.
join
Oh,
it in those moments?
yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And I will say for me, those are the moments I isolate
Yes.
first.
Yes. And that's the nature of the byproduct of trauma, is that we tend to isolate in those precise moments when we're most in need of care.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, so I know that we've been kind of leading the conversation and kind of through our own experience, but what else about the book what's something that maybe we haven't covered that you'd want to make sure that you highlight about how this particular work can be helpful for people?
Sure. I think my heart in writing this book was to give people some words, some guidance, a path to exploring their own stories. And so the book is laid out, what if you explored your family of origin story? What if you explored your sexual story? We're all sexual beings, and we all have stories of the development of our sexuality. And for many of us, those stories have been unmined because there's so much shame there. But
So much
you
presumption.
so much presumption. But your story matters to God. And if it matters to God, will you let it matter to you? And if it matters to you, will you write down one or two or three of the pivotal stories that you remember from your growing up years? So there's your family of origin story, there's your sexual story, there's the story that your body is telling you. I have a whole chapter on that. We especially of us evangelical types, we have to come to terms with the fact that we're embodied creatures. We are
Right.
bodies.
We really don't quite grasp how significant our body is.
Mhm.
That's right.
It's almost we are. I mean, there's various forms of this, and whether it be Gnosticism or certain theological traditions that de-emphasize the bodily parts of who we are as human
Yeah.
beings.
And you
Yes.
were not before we got on the show, you were talking about one of the chapters in your book, Adam, is about race and the
Right. Mhm.
story of your own race.
Right.
And for Jeff, what's interesting is being adopted, he didn't know his race,
Right.
until we were given the privilege of meeting his biological mom when he was 30 to find out, that you are half Mexican, a fourth Cherokee, and a fourth English, and how that plays a huge role in your story. One, because of racism when you were younger, but also now for your health, with the diabetes and everything. There's so much that plays into Jeff's story just on the
Well,
race.
and yeah, when Adam was talking about gender, sexuality, and body, one of the things that's been interesting, and I think you experience this about me as well, is e- since I was a kid, people have always reflected back how strong I am.
Mm.
And there were other boys that envied that. Oh, if I was as strong as Jeff, I'd be working out more. Jeff is lazy because he's not working out more, and yet he's so strong.
Mm.
Or being overweight. And like I remember in college football, my body fat percentage it never got below like 12 or 13%. But there were guys on the team that were in the single digits.
Right.
And there was envy of that. Now, I could also go over to the bench press and bench press over 400 pounds. So there's something like it, but there was ambivalence towards this body.
Yes.
But after my heart attack, one of the things that came out was how quickly my body responded. Beth and I have talked about this repeatedly, where I never got an infection. I never had a reaction to medication. And my body responded when I walked and I pressed it with weights and started to take care of it again. It responded in kind, and how grateful I was that my body responded, because that's not always a given. But there are beliefs, there are experiences, like even Beth is like, yeah, that's right. Like you never got an infection, you never had a blood clot, there was no reactions to a medication that you had taken. And it's just a part of being married to Jeff.
Yeah.
And being married to his body.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So all of that, I mean, it's shocking to think of it, but you bring up the race part too, because I remember sitting with a diabetic specialist. One of the criteria of determining your inclination towards or possibility of getting diabetes is higher if you're of Hispanic origin.
Right.
But I grew up with very white, Texas, Caucasian family, and so there's part of me that's like, well, that's not me, and then there's another part of me that's like, oh no, that is me.
Yep.
And I carry that with me, and I look at my biological family history, and I'm like, yeah, this was all predictable because they were experiencing all of these things. And so in some sense, I kind of, in when I found out that many of them struggled with the same illnesses that I do, related to the heart and the diagnosis, I had to grieve
Yes.
and feel the sorrow and the weight of what my body has been carrying
Yes.
that I wasn't even aware of cognitively.
Yes.
And so whenever I get up to walk now, it's kind of there's a certain sense like we're in this together. I'm choosing kindness and care by going on a walk.
Yeah. Even on a day like today when it's 20 degrees.
Dude, I was so bundled up.
He even said he was so cold afterwards. It's like I was wearing gloves when I was trying to work at the computer.
I couldn't. My body wouldn't
Well,
come back.
and as we close, because there's, like you said, everyone has a story. Like I really did grow up in a pretty dynamic family, and I have a story,
Yep.
and I have pain. So there's going to be a lot of people listening that are like, wow, this makes sense. Or maybe I need to step into my own story where, but it's a big deal.
It's a
And
big deal.
it's not easy. And your book is great. So definitely get Adam's book 100%. But how else can they start doing their story work? Where should they go? What should they do? Give them
Sure.
some ideas.
Sure. Two places I know. One is where I met your husband, Jeff, which was at the Allender Center. The Allender Center runs story workshops, which are 4-day experiences where you bring a story that you write out and it's engaged by a wise, trained guide. And that's a baptism into this work. TheAllenderCenter.org is the place you can go, TheAllenderCenter.org. Another person that's doing work in this area is Kurt Thompson, and he has what they are called confessional communities, where you can begin to explore your story in some depth. But for those people that are like, hey, I have a story and I want to explore it more deeply, if you can afford it, there are lots of therapists or story work coaches that are trained in this work that will walk with you into the details of your story. And again, you can go to theallendercenter.org. They have a find a therapist button for all the people that have been trained in this. You can go to my website, adamyoungcounseling.com, and I have a list of therapists that have been trained in this. But there are increasingly places where you can go and get trauma-informed story work care.
Well, and also, if I can just say, also, Adam, your podcast, if you can talk a little bit about your podcast.
Yes, my podcast, it's called The Place We Find Ourselves. And if you go back, there's like 150 plus episodes now, but go back to the beginning and listen to especially the ones that grab you, the titles that grab you. And you can also listen to, I interview lots of people on the podcast and they share a story that they've written. There's probably over 30 episodes where some very courageous volunteer comes on, reads one of their family of origin stories, and then we engage it together.
Yeah.
And that's all available for you to listen to so that you can get a sense of what does it look like to tell a story and to engage your story.
Yeah.
I'm mindful at the beginning of the recovery meeting I attend, we always had this part of the reading that says, if you'll come to 6 consecutive meetings, you'll start to come out of denial and memories will return.
Yep.
And realize you may think it's too overwhelming. There are going to be all kinds of beliefs. I can't say the truth about my story because my family doesn't allow me to name the truth about my story. And even though they may not be physically present, they kind of, the rule leads your life still. So realize that there is patience, there is perseverance. I do wonder, Adam, when you think about for some who might want to just grab the book and start writing out stories.
Yes.
What are some encouragements there? And then maybe what are some cautions to give people if they were to try to do this alone with your book?
Right. I wouldn't recommend doing it alone. I mean, the idea of a good view out your window, a cup of coffee, a journal, your Bible, my book, whatever book you're reading, wherever you find inspiration and encouragement in this kind of labor, like you can't do this work alone. You can do some of it alone, but we need each other to be named well in the context of our stories. So we need other faces and other voices to hear our stories. I couldn't see Adam, the 10-year-old Adam, 15-year-old Adam, well until there were other people who heard me tell some of his stories. And then they said, Adam, this is what I see in your story.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, I arrived at a truth through the experiences, reflections, faces, tones of voice of others who heard my stories. And so a word of caution would be, you can do some of this work by yourself, but you need other people. We all do.
It's shocking to me. I mean, whenever I write a story down, a memory down, versus when I share it with another person.
Oh, yeah.
Which speaks to where the memory and the healing needs to take place. Like these happened physically and embodied. and need to be healed physically and embodied. And so, why it's not just a head game of just remembering, but it's actually experiencing healing relationships
Yeah.
and letting our humanity be in a full expression in that sense.
Well, Adam, how can people again engage with your work? Let's start with your book, and then social media
Mhm.
places, email, and then maybe your website.
Sure. The book's coming out March 4th. It's called Make Sense of Your Story. You can get it anywhere books are sold. The podcast that I host is called The Place We Find Ourselves Podcast. It's available on all platforms. And Instagram is at Adam Young Counseling. And my website is adamyoungcounseling.com.
Right. Well, I cannot recommend more your book to everyone. And just even from an Enneagram perspective, I hope that people will engage with your book from the lens of their Enneagram type, because
Mhm.
that's going to be very informative. And also, just to let people know that they may not know that we've done podcasts before. Um, around trauma and type. And I
Yep.
really recommend people listening to that if they're going to do some story work, because we really unpacked how each type kind of processes and goes through their own sense of trauma. And it's very, very helpful. And I think that's where a lot of our shame can come from. For me as a type 9, I'm like, oh, I've got to just bottle it all up and make everyone happy. When no, that's like the very thing that's causing it to keep festering inside. So everyone realize that your story and your Enneagram type play a role together. And unpacking that is so important.
Yes.
Um, well, Adam, it has been an absolute joy and a delight to have you with us again. I know that we're going to definitely have you back on our podcast because we just love talking with you. But thank you for taking the time just to be with us. But more importantly, thank you for taking the time to write this, even if it's just for me. It meant the world to read your book. Thank you so much.
And Adam, thank you. You were a gift to me during those training times, and I can't express to you how meaningful it is that you are a gift again
Yeah.
with Beth in this season. Um, 6 months ago, I don't think she would have been able to read your book, but she has there. She's taken back terrain in her
Mhm.
heart,
Yep.
Mhm.
and it's been a real gift. And so you have spurred that on once again. So thank you. Thank you. You've been a very healing presence in our lives.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me on your podcast. I enjoyed our conversation immensely.